So over the next 15 minutes, my goal is to kind of talk a bit about our journey through Agentic AI over the last 20 months. It's fair to say that when we set out, we didn't call it Agentic AI. That's a term that's kind of emerged in the market over the last 6 months or so. We talked about things like AI team members or multi-agent teams, but let's kind of dive into it. Somebody said to me recently that having described what we do, that they felt what we were trying to do was to make AI better. And actually, that's a fair description of where we set out, because we'd been playing with large language models in the early days and generative AI, but our backgrounds are as founders are in large organizations at the heart of operating models in secure and regulated spaces like defense and national security and financial services. So what we were trying to do in those early days was to understand how we could capture and harness and the innovation that was in the AI ecosystem, but work out how to make it valuable at the heart of those serious organizations doing serious things. It's probably worth me just kind of introducing both myself and some of the other behind the team. So my background's technologist. I've worked for global organizations for many years, primarily Atos. I was managing partner, chief digital officer. I was COO and deputy CEO for UK and Central Europe in a payment organization. But actually, the thing that I'm probably known for most is my work around corporate digital responsibility, which I'd probably describe as a global movement, started about 8 years ago, looking at the consequential impact of the things that we chose to do with technology and its impact on people, society, and planet. Now, why is that relevant in an AI space? Because it is covering those things like AI bias, transparency, auditability, etc. So my background and my plan in a lot of this work that we're doing and talking about is, how do I have a positive impact on people through the work that we do? How do we innovate responsibly? My co-founders, as I mentioned earlier, had got a background in defence and national security. Ben, who was ex-Detica, ex-BAE Systems, had spent 15 years at the heart of national security and intelligence, using data and AI to keep us all safe. So in a sense, that set the approach that we took in making AI better. It was to think about how we would do that in the most highly secure spaces, which I appreciate is not necessarily the obvious thing that anyone would think of in terms of setting out to do a startup by trying to hit the most complex area first. But that was kind of what we wanted to demonstrate that you could do. If I kind of put my COO hat on from the payment business, then I knew that it needed to be operationally reliable, that if I was using this, it needed to be enterprise grade. It needed to be trusted within the heart of the operating model, and trusted by the business, and trusted by IT, trusted by the people who were using it. So in a sense, if you combine those things, what we set out to do was utilize AI in all its various forms, but especially large language models and generative AI and what's become known as agents and agentic AI at the heart of the operating model, to massively accelerate and augment the capabilities that those organizations have to help people to do the work that needs to be done in those secure enterprises. And I suppose it's then probably best to bring it to life with some of the work that we started doing back in 2023. So October 2023 seems an eternity away, and yet it's only, 14, 15 months. But about that time, we started building our first multi-agent teams. And this, in essence, is a cartoon version of what in reality is more like 30, 40 agents operating together. If I describe an agent as a mixture of using a large language model to communicate, we don't use large language models to answer questions. We don't use large language models in the context of fine tuning, if kind of people are familiar with that as an approach. We don't create our own models. We use models in conjunction with enterprise data, enterprise applications, and we give them sets of capabilities like memory and teachability and the ability to interact with tools across the enterprise. So an agent, in a sense, people are more familiar with because kind of lots of other organizations around the world are creating agents. But the superpower has been harnessing those together in teams. And some of those early days, of course, were quite amusing if you looked at arguments between agents and agents walking out of debates and discussions around how to do work. But once you actually kind of got the hang of how do I create concepts like round tables of agents that have the autonomous decision making to be able to interact with each other in ways that they determine to solve the problem that's been set, then it's amazing kind of the kind of things that you can get done with those agents. So a number of things to note about this. Firstly, multiple agents acting together. Sometimes it's sequential serial agents. Sometimes it's concepts of, as I said, round tables, agent teams. What we do is provide multi-agent teams, nested agent teams within agent teams, allowing people to be part of that work at any point. We don't see this as something that's as simple as ask a model a question and get an answer out at the back. This is rethinking work. This is about creating high-performing hybrid teams where the hybrid members are either people or are agents or combinations of agents. And the accelerative effects of that is in October 2023, in the defense space, we were able to take a process, in this case, cost estimation, and collapse something that took weeks and numbers of people down to something that took 20 to 30 minutes. So when you think about that as a consequential impact, it's not only in terms of a productivity improvement, a functional productivity improvement, but it's also kind of enabling organizations to drastically reduce the elapsed time to deliver. So that's where we started. That's in a sense our early experiences. What we do today is what the world calls agentic AI. We probably do it slightly differently to some. So from our point of view, yes, there is autonomous decision making, but it is autonomous decision making in the context of the tasks and the subtasks that are there, supporting the decision making that is then done by the people that are part of that hybrid team. And it's entirely up to an organization whether they choose to kind of put 10% agents and 90% people, or 10% people and 90% agents. It's entirely their choice. It's entirely configurable. But the key thing is that complete transparency, the ability to engage in doing that work, the ability to influence that work, the ability for that agent team to learn both from the work that it's doing as multiple agents, but also from that engagement with people. There's nothing to stop me intervening in a piece of work that's being done and demanding that everything should then be done in Spanish, where I'm able to interact in Spanish, or whatever. So it's that ability to interact. Somebody that I was talking to, who some of the on the call may know, Steve Smith. Steve owns a business called Raise the Bar. Steve is still today the British high jump record holder, 2 meters 37, and a bronze medalist in the Olympic Games. And Steve, I was chatting to, and an early adopter in multi-agent systems. Indeed, actually, I was talking to him the other day and said he was probably one of the world's first in terms of production, operational use of multi-agent teams in delivering their business. Certainly, I saw a report a couple of weeks ago that said there are no production agentic AI installations. Well, there are. But Steve's phrase was I did this because I want to make my team incredible. It wasn't about doing it because he was looking to make more profit or needed to replace people. He wanted to enable his people to do an amazing job. And in this particular case, it's about enabling them to spend more frontline time doing the things that they love doing, rather than some of the things they have to do. And that's applicable anywhere. If we can kind of enable teams to be incredible in the work that they do, able to kind of deliver far quicker with this kind of superpower team behind them supporting them, then that seems an amazing thing to do. The way we often start thinking about this is this simple question. So whether we're talking in defense space or whether we're talking in any market, any organization, if you could assemble the best team in the world with the best knowledge and capabilities, who would you put in it and what tools would they have access to? And that's what we then build with an agent team. And it's not, when I say build, it's a configuration exercise. It's how do we give them that knowledge? How do we give them those tools? And how do we steer them towards the tasks in hand, whatever they may be? And it's very much an iterative exercise. It's very quick to set up and configure an agent team to do some kind of pretty complex work. To do something like cost estimation, for example, can be done in a matter of days or weeks. But then it's a process which many of us will be familiar with from a kind of agile and a DevOps space of just kind of iterating it towards better. It'll be good. It'll be good enough, but then it'll be better because you think of other agents to add into the mix. You think of other data sources, and actually maybe it creates more data sources. Maybe it invents more process, so you can optimize the performance of that team by enabling it to kind of continually improve. The thing that we're probably most known for at this stage is this piece around reducing the time to deliver. But it starts kind of from that moment where we're saying, I have a thing to do. I need to procure something. I've got X billion to spend. I have this problem. And maybe it includes things like the cost estimation that I've talked about, or risk analysis, or scheduling, or planning, prioritizing. We've got agent teams that take in a request of a project spec and will automatically create epics and stories and automatically populate Kanban boards and automatically enable kind of you to have this hybrid team that helps you kind of just accelerate the pace with which you do things. Maybe it's in the kind of way in which you engage with other parties across the supply chain. Maybe that's around shortening the time to procure, defining the sets of requirements that you've got, building out ways to evaluate proposals that can come back. Or maybe it's helping you in the delivery phase of effectively governance, controls, PMO capability, interfacing with supply chain. In essence, our focus is reducing the time to deliver. And part of it is productivity improvement, and part of it is collapsing the elapsed time to kind of do those things. And it doesn't matter whether it's capital projects, as we've done, or people projects, or IT projects, or service delivery. That's our primary work focus, if you like, in terms of application of agent teams to make a difference. Now, some people on the call, and certainly myself, have talked about Lean and Six Sigma for years, have done things like intelligent automation, RPA, etc. And we've found ways of getting 10%, 20%, 30%, 40% more efficient. But this is just game changing. When you're talking about doing something that's 120 times faster than any solution that is currently there, and even that's not a correct figure, because actually you can do far more in that time. That's just a one-to-one comparison of the output. Then it enables organizations to rethink the way they work, not just the kind of way they think in terms of processes, but what does a born in agentic organization, what does that look like? We're just at the process of scaling up. And one of the key things that's important to us is not just about recruiting people to do the jobs that kind of we would have always done in the past, but understanding what should be done, could be done by agentic teams supporting the people that we're bringing in to enable us to do far, far more with the people that we're able to kind of build around us. I think there are some obvious benefits that we've seen, but maybe kind of one of the most interesting ones that perhaps wasn't seen was consistency. So we there might be some people on the call might be thinking, how can you talk about consistency when you're talking about generative AI technologies and large language models? But bear in mind that most of the things that we do with the large language models are around communication, and therefore most of our solution is deterministic because we're using and hooking into data stores, applications, etc. Indeed, I was thinking earlier today in another event, we're probably the AI company that isn't really an AI company, but we are. But it's just we've got a bit of an anti-pattern in terms of how we think about these things. There was a guy that worked for me many years ago, and he wrote a blog article once, which was what would we do if the IT actually worked? And maybe that was a slightly cynical view in terms of kind of the number of jobs across the industry fixing things, supporting things. But in a sense, I actually kind of look at agentic AI and it is changing the paradigm for some of the things that we've known and loved for many years. I look at data, for example, differently now. I was speaking at an event, an AI event recently, and many people stood up and said, we need complete data. You need to make sure your data is right before starting this. I disagree. You don't. You need some data, and the data can be continually improved. But we're not building massive models. We're using models, but we're using models in conjunction with partial data sets to still do some interesting work. We don't need huge infrastructures because we're not building models. We're not fine-tuning models. So there's kind of strong arguments around cost or sustainability. In fact, actually, I don't care what the models are. Happy to use small language models. It insulates people from the pace of innovation in the models. Even if AGI was there tomorrow, we can still do things with this architecture using AGI. A big organization is not going to suddenly implement AGI. So just bringing up to date, we're UK primarily based, and we've one of our co-founders is in the US, based near Washington. We've been part of a cohort in the defence space over the past 6 months, organised by Mission Link, which is a joint UK-US initiative, which is putting scale-ups alongside key figures in the defence and the national security space. We're opening offices in the US. We are on the back of a new funding round, opening up a US business and expanding in both the UK and the US. Now, I'm conscious this is about defence, but we are dual use. All the reasons why we started are as relevant as important to critical national infrastructure. So we are working with HS2 through an Atos consortium. We are talking to oil companies, utilities, because exactly the same things that I've talked about in terms of secure enterprise grade are relevant in those spaces. And of course, the other thing to say is, as part of that scale up, we are recruiting. We are building out a platform, a whole range of technical roles within that. We have been growing this year already, will continue to do so. And I think my final pitch is to say, one of the key things is just to keep track with what's going on in the market. I've been running a podcast. I'll do 2 podcasts, but I've been running a podcast for the last nearly 2 years now called Futurize. I've talked to CEOs and founders of AI businesses in the first season. This season's wholly focused on agentic, and talking to some fascinating people who are either building or adopting or take Nicholas, 27 startups, keeps kind of pushing for whatever's next. But they are short, easy to consume, 15 to 20 minutes of globally relevant expertise talking about agentic AI. And I've probably kind of gone slightly over maybe, but hopefully that gives you a bit of a flavour of our route from nothing to within about 20 months, finding ourselves at the heart of the agentic AI revolution, absolutely across defence and national security, both sides of the Atlantic, but very much spilling out into critical national infrastructures.
So hi everyone. So I'm Paul Jenkinson. I'm one of the co-founders and CEO of Whitespace. It's great that Rob's done his talk first, so I don't have to talk about what agents are. So that's great. Thanks, Rob. So we've been building AI in the defence sector since 2020. We started in the sort of the decision intelligence space, and back in sort of 2022, we got asked by one of the units within the MOD to build out effectively what was a generative AI capability, and we built that out, deployed it, kind of in the pre-ChatGPT days. But we could see right at that time, we could see the power of this technology and how it could be generalized to lots of other areas. So we started building out at the start of 2023 an agent framework and started to really experiment and push the boundaries with alongside defense as to how we could use this technology. And that culminated in October 2023. We were asked to go into number 10 to brief number 10 prior to the Bletchley Park Summit on how the multi-agent stuff that we were doing could be a threat. So it was kind of an interesting one. We got asked by number 10 to what was this multi-agent stuff, and we kind of told them all the virtues and all the benefits, and they said no, we just want the downside. So myself and my co-founder, we're both technical. We went away that night to think about how this could be weaponized, and neither of us slept that night. So it was yeah. So we briefed into number 10, and we've spent the last number of years just really building out that capability and deploying it into defense. And we took that experience during 2024 and built out our collective AI platform. And I think a lot of Rob's experience would be kind of echoed in our experience. So we've got we're in the MOD. We've got an enterprise agreement for our platform. So units within defense can now just procure our platform just with a purchase order. So we bypass procurement, and it's about to go into secret classification in the coming weeks. So it'll make it available to anybody. But when we built out the platform, we built it on 4 principles. So the first one was we had to be able to deploy it anywhere. So we can deploy it, any cloud provider on-prem. We can do it in air-gapped environments. We can run it even on a Raspberry Pi. We can run it on an iPhone, even an iPhone 14, so not even the latest ones. So we've very much been focused on this has to be ubiquitous. It has to be wherever you need it. Forward operating bases, it could be on a satellite. And in fact, it's about to go on to aircraft carriers and submarines. So that was part of one of the first principles we wanted with AI. It can't be a fair weather friend. It can't be just there when you have an internet connection. It's got to be where you need it. The second principle, again, similar to Rob, is it has to be tech agnostic. The speed of development is, it's just phenomenal. Look at myself and Rob are probably similar ages. We've probably never seen a speed of technology adoption before. So I've gone through, I was a CFO of a .com business. Things were moving fast, or you thought they were then. Nothing compared to now. So you can't lay bets. You have to be tech agnostic. So things like when DeepSeek came out, you'll have heard about it. It was on our platform, and we were using it within 17 minutes. And that's the sort of thing, the kind of agility you need. The third kind of principle is around is trust. And again, echo a lot of what Rob said. It is about how do you provide explainability, corroboration of the data. Don't use the models for facts or information. You use it for their understanding of language. And there's a whole bunch of things you can do around trust. How you can reduce hallucinations, prompt injection, all the vulnerabilities, and make it compliant with the EU AI Act and GDPR and HIPAA and all these other things as well. So when we go to enterprise clients or government clients, you can go, look, these are all the mitigations that we've done. These are all the protections that you're having. So I think that we spent a lot of 2023 and 2024 giving people confidence. I think that battle has stopped now. I think people are right. Okay, you can deploy it in a safe environment. So the fourth principle as well is it's that for our feelings, the value is really at the application layer. So it's not just here's some AI, Copilot, ChatGPT, do some slightly nicer PowerPoint slides or help you with an Excel formula. Those sort of things allow people to go to the pub early on a Friday, but it doesn't transform your organization. So for us, it's all about how you can build significant and valuable applications really, really quick on the platform. So we have a low code, no code part of the platform, and you can build pretty much anything on it. And just to give you an example, we were doing a bid for one of the police forces. They gave us the sort of tender document. There was other people were bidding about 150 to 200,000 for the proof of concept. We did it in 3 hours on our platform before the meeting. And that's the speed of it. The speed, if you've built out that kind of application layer, the speed you can build things. Again, when we won a contract with the US Army and US Navy to build out our agentic application for them, and we did that with no US presence at the time. That was purely based on the technology we're building. But again, we would normally have built that with 5 people over a 12-week build cycle, and we had it, one person did it in 2 weeks. And again, it's the speed you can build and iterate is so much faster than before. And I'll give an example of an application that we've built recently into originally the UK Navy. And this was all around how you could improve learning and institutional knowledge within a very siloed organization. So, yeah, everyone knows what's happening out in Ukraine. The battlefield is changing by the hour, not every year or 2 years or 3 years. So defense has to increase the learning cycle, I mean, at a phenomenal pace. So we built out a system that allows them to take all those learnings in real time, and not only allow a squaddie or someone quite junior just to describe what went wrong, their lesson or observation. It will then do kind of interrogate them to find really what is the root cause, and it's doing all this through speech to text and text to speech. They can upload videos, images. So so if they say, "Oh, my gun jammed," okay, well, you can't really do much about that, but it'll then go, well, which version of gun was it? When the last time it was at service? What was the weather conditions, etc., etc. Find out the root cause. It will then write a standard NATO report, an ODCR report for them. It will then triage. Is this something we should notify the supplier? Is it an update to the standard operating procedures? Is it update the tactical plans? Is it notify other people? Or is it look at analysis across all those similar ones to find a trend? So that capability, like I say, we built it originally for the Navy. It's gone. We've been demonstrating over the last 4 weeks to the Army, the different units within Special Forces, Strategic Command, Air Command, and they're all blown away with it because it solves a massive problem for them across the whole of defence. So now we're being accelerated onto the secret classification. We're going to go live in the coming weeks. And then it'll be available to 260,000 people across defence for all their institutional knowledge and learnings. And that's the sort of the power where you can take, old electronic suggestion box or Excel forms that people fill out and have a massive impact on the organisation. So those devices, we can put them into air-gapped environments now. They can listen into mission briefings and provide information to the people who are planning, say, a mission, and say, well, actually, you're about to use that equipment in that situation. Well, 2 years ago on a NATO exercise, this went wrong. So don't use that version, use that version. And that kind of assistance in real time is incredibly powerful. And we've got a huge amount of interest. We're over in the US next week. So we're demonstrating that to the Department of Defense. We're over in Brussels next month with NATO, because they love the multi-language capabilities of it. So you can put your information in Polish, done your natural language queries in terms of what knowledge is there, but everything can be stored and used in English or other languages. So I think, and that's having a real kind of impact. Now on that one, we partnered with Google. We have very deep partnerships with Microsoft and Oracle and others, but we partnered with Google because it just gives us the ability to take this capability to scale. We haven't really partnered with the traditional sort of defense primes. We've tended to partner more with the tech primes. So yeah, and then what we also do with the application layer is also about how you connect to applications. So I think a traditional software builds are very siloed as well. Its data is stuck in this little data prison of an application. But when we build our applications, they can all connect and talk to each other. So we have another capability we built for the Vice Chief of Defence, which is around generating insights. So when he would ask a question like, could the UK pivot to an Iron Dome strategy? Historically, he would have to either go out to Deloitte or Accenture or Russi to write a report. It takes 6 months, cost a fortune. Or he would go to his military advisor, or she at the moment, go to her military advisor, and they would then cascade that question across all the frontline commands, and it would cause chaos because then everyone's fighting for, or I need more of my whatever they are. So air would always be, right, I need more aircraft. But what we did is built a research insights capability. This was way before deep research from OpenAI. We finished this in February last year, but it allows them to go out and take open source data, internal secret data, and write reports. So what we did a lot last year as part of the kind of stress testing stuff was what if Donald Trump wins the US election and pulls the US out of NATO? What's the impact on the UK? No, I think that's we need to dust those down actually and find out what was said. So that's kind of where we feel the application layer is so important. Also, but for the application layer, you've also got to have context. And this is something we talk a lot about. It's about contextual intelligence. If you just ask a question, well, what's the impact on the UK of the US pulling out of NATO? It'll just give you an opinion. It's got to be contextualized. It's got to be personal to you as the organization. Super important. Otherwise it's just an opinion. You might as well ask your mate in the pub. So we're very focused on what are the objectives of that organization? What are they trying to achieve? Now in defense, they have defense tasks. They have very clear deliverables. They're often competing deliverables. In the enterprise, it's usually a bit easier. It's usually profit, cash flow, a few ESG criteria. But in government, it's usually a far more complex environment. They have counterterrorism. They have protect overseas territories, protect the UK mainland. They do have ESG credentials, protect or support the British supply chain. Really complex objectives. They also have a lot more constraints in government than they do in enterprise. So in government, you have budgets, which you can't change. CDEL, RDEL, different splits of budgets, you have to spend it. Whereas in enterprise, if you've got loads of really good projects, you can always potentially raise more money to do all of them. You don't have those kind of options in defense. So again, we built out a decision intelligence platform using AI to help them optimize their portfolios. So for strategic command, for instance, they're spending $100 billion over 10 years, and they can go in and actually look at, of all the projects they're doing, the hundreds and hundreds of projects, how can they get an optimized portfolio? So they can pick for different projects, the AI will say, well, this one should be deferred or deleted or descoped or protected. And that helps them actually really understand the choices they need to make. But the key to it is it's always human in the loop. It's always going back to the user. It's always saying, well, you need to provide your applied military judgment to this process as well. It can't just be AI. And that's a real key for us, is that you need to be able to do that. You need to be able to work with a human and other experts as well to provide that proper decision support. And echoing Rob's comment before about data, we've been a massive champion within defense to say this is not about data. They talk a lot and have done for a number of years about data-driven decision making. And I sat in the main building with about 20 1, 2, 3, 4-star generals, and they all said, "Oh, we need to clean up all our data." And I said, "Look, this building here makes 1 million decisions a day. Are you going to stop all them till your data's clean in 2 or 3 years' time?" And they were like, "Oh, no." So, okay, you need to think more about the person and the individual. Start with a decision. What are the decisions you're asking those people to make? Then go and find data that can help support those decisions. And so it's a very different way of doing it. It's like if you're always thinking that AI needs data, it's the wrong kind of approach in the world that we're moving into. And going back to things like the trust in the data. We build out knowledge graphs, we build out decision models that sit alongside. That means you have that audit trail of what's happening. You can see what's happening, and you can deliver a really good feedback loop for the user has to make that decision. And importantly, provide them an audit trail, because the decisions that we're supporting are very uncertain in nature. They're not, cat, is it a cat or is it a dog? Is it a tumor? Is it not a tumor? It's, what is the impact of, how could UK protect the Red Sea shipping lanes? That's inherently uncertain, inherently complex. So you have to provide a lot more supporting collateral to say, well, this is the decision that's being made, but it might have the wrong outcome. It might still be the right decision, but the outcome might not be what you want, because maybe 40% of the time the other thing happens. So we provide a lot more context to the user, but it has to be kind of human in the loop for the kind of things that we're doing. And kind of finally, I think it's also that idea that if you really understand the decisions, you can really support the decision maker. So I'll give an example is you might have two courses of action, decision A and decision B. Decision A is 55% likely, or choice B is 45% likely. Now you might think, okay, let's go for A. but because you live in a very uncertain world, pretty much half the time that decision is going to be wrong. So what you can look at is actually, which decision is easier to reverse. So all the time you're looking at and gaming, well, actually a lot of these decisions, nearly half of my decisions are going to be wrong. How can I unwind them? Prepare for unwinding them, prepare for them changing and pivoting. And that's creating a lot more agility for large organizations. They've never thought like that. They tended to think, right, everything's going to go exactly to the budget. And when that doesn't, someone gets sacked and everything gets pivoted and it becomes chaos. But if you go in with the understanding that actually this is hugely uncertain, you could make so much better decisions and give people confidence to make decisions. One of the things in defense sometimes is paralysis. No one wants to make a decision because it's inherently uncertain. You say, well, actually, you can't change that. So let's embrace it, let's understand it, and let's move forward fast. So yes, that's kind of, a lot of what we're doing in defense is all about that. How can you move faster? How can you learn better? How can you make better, smarter, faster decisions? And AI and agentic AI is a massive, massive boom to helping that. The way it can gather unstructured data, the way it can run models, the way it can query, it's huge. You can't do that with people. So yeah. So that's it really. I mean, happy to answer any questions.